here we are ready for the scientific breakthrough, Mr. Panzironi. And this evening we are going to talk about an eye problem that is not very serious, but certainly widespread. We are talking about cataracts. To better understand what it is, let's take a look at this video.
Let's say that cataract nowadays is one of the most common eye conditions, and also one that creates perhaps the most discomfort in people of a certain age. It is not perhaps the frequency that has been increasing, but it is due to the fact that the average lifespan on the one hand has become much longer, and therefore being a disease of the elderly has become much more frequent. Meanwhile, to explain a little bit, cataract is nothing but a lens that is inside in the eye that is normally transparent. When this lens with age more frequently, or there are also other causes but of lesser importance, becomes opaque, it is called a cataract.
Here, Mr. Panzironi, we listened to Dr. Alberto Carlotto, who told us that cataract is one of the most common diseases in Italy. Do you know how prevalent it is?
Unfortunately, it is worse than an epidemic, because it is practically talked about that 90% of people who are 75 years old have cataracts. Even every year are operated on 550,000 people.
Mr. Panzironi, again, Dr. Carlotto said that the frequency, the incidence has not increased, but it depends on the fact that the average lifespan of the individual has increased. What do you think about that?
Absolutely, I disagree with this statement, because on the contrary, we see cataracts appearing more and more. Sooner cataracts. Today, people in their 50s who go for a simple examination notice that there is a major deterioration of the lens. And this was not happening just a few years ago. And then it must be said that science has now determined that there are nonetheless risk factors that tend to worsen precisely, and therefore opacify the lens, and they are diabetes. And of course, smoking. So this is a pathology that has to be considered as degenerative and not just a problem of old age also, because if it goes to the concept that anyway we have to get old, anyway these pathologies have to appear, at that point we also go to, let's say, incorrectly deal with this pathology. So we always go for therapy that goes on the effects and never on the causes.
Then, at this point, let's see how official medicine deals with the treatment of this pathology, cataract. Let's look at it together.
So at some point, you have to fix this opaque lens, which nowadays means surgically removing it. However, being a lens, it has to be replaced, and it is replaced with an intraocular lens, i.e., at the time of surgery, the lens is put inside in the eye, so that once operated on, the patient has replaced one lens with another lens, and if all goes well, as it almost always does, fortunately, he goes back to seeing as he was before the cataract. Moreover, the surgery over the years has had a very marked positive evolution, both as results, but also from the point of view of ocular comfort and especially adherence. That is, we have gone from a hospitalization that lasted a fortnight, we have gone to day hospital, and now we have come to outpatient surgery. It's like going to the dentist in simple terms. The patient goes to the hospital, has surgery, and comes home.
So, Mr. Panzironi, we understand from the video that basically the treatment is planned and the replacement of the lens with one that is, of course, artificial. What do you think about that?
And unfortunately, this medicine is increasingly going in the wrong direction. That is, by now we only think about replacing parts of our body. So we have problems with our knees or our hips, nothing. We go straight to surgery and put on prostheses. When in generative, they can also regress. In certain situations, they can even be cured without surgery. Again, if there was such an approach from dogmatic medicine, we would certainly have fewer surgical operations and much more focus on prevention.
In fact, Mr. Panzironi, it is thought that these diseases are inescapable. So basically, medicine does its focus, goes towards research, and tries to do surgeries that are safer for the patient.
Yes, certainly medicine is all about trying to reduce the length of stay or do operations that are somehow less invasive. I would argue that if this medicine would use the time and energy spent on this to go and better understand how diseases work, certainly we would have a different medicine today. First of all, we always have to talk about numbers because unfortunately 3% of people who have cataract surgery have adverse effects that are also very important. So every operation has its own risks. So one should always avoid getting to the operation if there are avenues that can avoid it.
You just said that we should have a different approach of treatment and that we need to understand the real causes, as you always say, the real causes of this pathology of cataract formation. That is precisely why, together with our editorial staff, she created a tutorial to help us understand what she was saying. Let's see it together.
The lens is composed of lenticular fibers that are divided into an inner and central portion and a superficial portion, called the cortical layer. Also present is a subcapsular epithelium composed of a layer of cuboid cells to which fibrillar homeostatic and regenerative regulation is assigned. Cataract is related by the accumulation of damage to proteins in the lenticular fibers caused by deamination, glycation, and peroxidation reactions. This process is induced by excess glucose-inducing protein glycation and glutathione deficiency, preventing counteracting free radical formation. Glutathione deficiency is caused by the deficiency of cysteine, one of the 3 amino acids needed by cells to produce glutathione. Cysteine, while not an essential amino acid, must be produced by transmethylation, which converts methionine to homocysteine using the enzyme cystathionine beta synthase, CBS. The process continues with transulfuration, which converts homocysteine to cysteine. Cortisol inhibits CBS and thus cysteine availability by inducing glutathione deficiency.
Here, Panzironi, the video explained to us that the lens, basically, is made up of protein fibers that undergo oxidative damage and that induces, in this way, the very opacification of the lens itself.
Yes, this is true, and this should make us understand that this is not a pathology of old age, but a degenerative pathology that certainly can appear even with old age, but because there are triggers that damage the lens. Also because there are these cells, cuboid cells, that have precisely the task of going to work and then reshaping the tissue of the lens, preventing its oxidation. Then on the other side, we also have antioxidants like glutathione that are found within the aqueous humor and that allow these antioxidants to prevent there from being an application and obviously a destruction of the lens matrix tissue.
In fact, in the video, they were just talking about excess glycation and glutathione deficiency, which is induced then, this deficiency, by a lack of one of the amino acids, namely cysteine.
Yes, this is an important aspect because the studies tell us that in people who suffer from cataracts precisely, there is a very low amount of glutathione, and this is because, as we explained precisely in the video, when we have let's say, an alteration in the production of cysteine, which is an amino acid that, although not essential, we don't need to produce it from methionine through the CBS enzyme. So an alteration of this enzyme leads to a deficiency of cysteines and therefore a deficiency, obviously, of glutathione. This causes damage to our lens, normally induced by sunlight, which is very oxidizing, but also by excessive, let's say, glycation induced precisely by excess blood glucose.
You mentioned 2 processes. We are talking about CBS enzyme deficiency and glycation of the lens. However, would you tell us what are the causes that induce these 2 processes?
Both processes are basically induced by a bad diet, i.e. that Mediterranean diet rich in foods such as bread, pasta, pizza, potatoes, rice and legumes, that being very rich in carbohydrates induce on the one hand an increase in blood glucose, and this leads to increased glycation clearly of the lens. On the other hand, they activate insulin. It's really insulin that inhibits the production of this CBS enzyme and therefore cannot transform methionine into cysteine through precisely the transformation of homocysteine. So basically what we eat induces precisely the occurrence of this pathology because, among other things, we also activate cortisol, which is another hormone that acts in inhibiting CBS.
Thank you, Mr. Panzironi, for these explanations of yours, always timely and careful. I want to say that at this point I would like to invite here within our study a witness, a person who has seen this issue healed, resolved, because it seems important to me to keep talking. But let's go and see in the practical act what happens. So I would ask the director to bring in Mr. Giuseppe Formicola from Naples. Mr. Formicola, good evening, welcome. I invite you, of course, to sit down. So let's talk now. Let's go into the 2016. It is an important date because you are diagnosed with cataracts in your right eye.
It's true, and therefore...
You had issues. What was happening?
Yes, actually, I couldn't drive. I couldn't do anything anymore because, of course, in the evening when the lights were on, for example, if I stayed here, I just couldn't stay. And it was giving me this problem, even to read, I don't know, something, to write, I had to put on magnifying glasses.
So go to a specialist. Diagnosis cataract?
Says I have cataracts and they would hospitalize me. Meanwhile, I waited these 2 years because unfortunately the waiting lists were long.
In 2000, in October 2017, you underwent lens replacement surgery on your right eye. The doctor, in the meantime, also tells you that the left eye had bad conditions, serious problems, and so in April of the following year, you had to have surgery again, but the left eye, right?
It was said that the next eye was the left eye because she had was maturing cataracts. And so he was saying the next checkup we do on the right eye is likely to put you back on the waiting list for the left eye as well.
So this was in October 2017. Then you start following our show, The Health Seeker, and you decide to start following the Life 120 Life series. When does this happen?
This I started on February 24 to follow Life 120 of 2018 in April. I was there to pass my visit.
Let's go in order. Excuse me, you in February 2018 decide to follow the Life 120 lifestyle, so you take out all the carbohydrates and you follow it, right, let's say. Then following that, you start to notice that your left eye was starting to improve a little bit. After you started doing the Life 120 lifestyle, you saw the left eye improve.
1.5 months.
So after about a month and a half. But then, mindful of what the specialist had said, obviously in April 2018, you still go for his checkup, your left eye examination by the same doctor who had operated on your right eye, right? You go and what happens?
I bring him the specialist that he had left me in October. And then I brought him the referral. He looked at it, he put it on there, he was putting his signature, and he made me sign it. He submitted me to the visit after 2 visits. Then I tell him, doctor, I have to operate. But who told you that? And doctor, you told me, here is your signature, you see on the specialist. He went there and looked at the specialist. He threw it on there. It comes again here, I must see you again. Made all the visits again. Then scratched his head.
So, let me see if I understand correctly. You come in, the doctor examines your left eye, and he is calm. You rightly ask, but then I have to have this cataract surgery, and he is incredulous because you don't seem to have the symptoms of this condition. And when I say, look, you told me, he is incredulous. He revisits it.
He scratches his head and then says, whatever. It can happen. Anyway, they bring these analyses, done optometry again, ocular fundus and visual field, and I take him to see me. He's still waiting.
He is still waiting. Mr. Formicola, I want to ask you a curiosity because you had been wearing glasses for 8 years because of a visual defect, 1 degree in the operated eye and 0.75 in the left one for myopia, right? Here. Then I have a curiosity. Why are you not wearing glasses this evening?
Yes, because I don't need it anymore. They took it away from me.
So the doctor told you not to bring the same doctor again?
You see,
The same doctor. So I thank Mr. Formicola.